I'm sure all of you have noticed online that a lot of people are talking about, why are these people allowed to be in this canopy? Why isn't this marked off and taped off as a crime scene? And why is this guy in the white shirt taking the most very important camera down? What you think is the most very important camera there, why is he taking it down? Well, here's why. Because it's not a crime scene. A crime didn't take place here, and that's not a camera. Now, before I tell you what it is, I want you to get a real good look at it as he's taking it down. Anybody figure out what it is yet? Okay, here's what it is. It's called a hologram projector. And if you don't believe me, you can go look them up online. And they're not cheap. They're not cheap. Usually $20 to $60, $70, $80,000 for these things. And they come in different varieties. Now, Hollywood calls them hologram stage projectors. Now, you see how Charlie's little tent there is a perfect square? And as you can tell, it's 10 foot squared, 10 foot all the way around on each square, and it's about 9 foot tall. That's because it has to be for the projection to work. Now, let's explain.
For smaller spaces, the projectors can be configured with mirrors to elongate the projection path and maintain picture integrity. Eyeliner displays ideally require a minimum footprint of 10 feet square and a height of 9 feet to show full-size human figures. What you are seeing is a reflected image which is so true and realistic to the original, it has become known as a virtual image. Many people perceive what they are seeing now as a 3D hologram. In fact, it is a 21st century take on a mid-19th century visual effect known as Pepper's Ghost, showing now on the relay screens. Thanks in part to the amazing optical properties of the eyeliner foil, combined with the light and picture output of Christie Digital high-definition projectors, the image has depth and opacity that actually supersedes the scale and definition of traditional 3D hologram.
Like I said before, 10 foot squared, 9 foot tall. This canopy was made this size for a purpose, because it is a hologram stage projection that you guys were watching.
It happened in front of thousands. A single crack, panic, a body hitting the floor. They reported Charlie KRIK was shot. But what if the moment we all thought we witnessed wasn't what it seemed? What if the moment we thought was real was, in whole or in part, a simulation? A perfectly timed illusion? What if some visual elements were digitally composed? The collapse, animated. The screams, layered audio, triggered on cue. Tonight, we're not asking who pulled the trigger. We're asking whether every element of what we saw on screens is an unedited record of events, or if some pieces deserve further technical scrutiny. Because when we pause the footage, some analysts observe the blood doesn't splatter like real fluid in certain frames. The impact doesn't always ripple in continuous motion. And Charlie KRIK's appearance in a few close frames raises questions analysts say warrant independent review. Those are technical observations offered by forensic video specialists, leads to test, not definitive conclusions. What if parts of the evidence circulating online were digitally fabricated, and we, in sharing and viewing, amplified those elements without knowing? What if the crime, or its presentation to millions, included manipulation as a component? Before we go further, write in the comments, where are you watching from? And more importantly, who do you know that might want to see a measured, evidence-based re-examination of the footage? Share responsibly. Don't amplify raw claims without provenance. We're not here to accuse, we're here to explore. Because when you begin to look closely, really closely, at every layer of this story, the cracks begin to show to some observers. There are questions about visible evidence. Some commentators point out an absence of widely circulated, independently verified wide-angle footage that shows the whole scene in continuous unedited form. There are no widely published, high-resolution, open-source body photographs beyond tightly framed shots. Certain circulated videos exhibit artifacts that forensic technicians say can be consistent with digital overlay or compositing, subtle distortions, timing mismatches, and compression glitches that deserve technical testing. Witnesses reported other oddities. Some said they detected no distinct scent, sometimes associated with very close gunfire. Others reported acoustic anomalies, little or no echo in a space where an amplified impulse might be expected. These are personal reports that raise questions investigators can test against sensor and scene data. Some independent analysts report that infrared passes and frame-by-frame review reveal faint ghost edges in specific clips, as if some figures or spray effects were composited into a master image. Metadata in a few uploaded high-speed camera files has been reported by open-source investigators to show post-capture timestamps. Forensic teams always verify such leads against camera masters and chain-of-custody records. At least one eyewitness told journalists they saw a brief flicker, a faint grid pattern, at the moment a shot is reported to have occurred. Again, that is a reported observation that requires original files to corroborate. Publicly released reporting and official statements confirm the shooting at Utah Valley University on September 10, 2025. Law enforcement and federal agencies have been working the case and requesting footage and tips from the public. Those official investigatory steps are the correct route to resolve technical questions. Some open-source reviewers note limited availability of truly raw feeds from multiple independent vantage points. Many of the widely shared clips appear to derive from a single or small number of master encodes. That pattern makes it harder for independent analysts to cross-check and reconcile timelines across angles. If you have original footage, preserve it, include metadata, and consider submitting it to official investigators. When you compare the irregularities flagged by analysts to known display and compositing technologies, stage holography, augmented reality overlays, large-scale projection systems, or composited broadcast graphics, the pattern can look familiar to technicians who have worked in live productions. We've seen convincing illusions staged in arenas and festivals. Entire performances can be made to look real. That technical similarity is why independent verification matters. If parts of what was shown were projection or compositing, it would explain a number of unresolved issues that some analysts and members of the public have pointed to. Why no uncropped, widely vetted body photograph circulated publicly? Why certain blood looks more like an animated particle effect than pooled fluid in freeze frames? And why official timelines were widely reported before independent verifications were available? It would also help explain the visual anomalies that analysts have flagged. Timing mismatches across angles, edge distortions where motion is fastest, and compression artifacts that concentrate around high-contrast transitions. And that raises the question none of us can ignore. If elements were engineered, was the purpose to manufacture outrage? To manipulate media narratives? To distract the public from a separate event? Or was it an experiment in mass perception? A test of how far media-driven reality can be pushed? If the shooting never truly occurred in the way some versions portray it, if segments were staged or composed, then what was the purpose? Political theater? A distraction from another scandal? A psychological operation aiming to redirect public attention? These are possible hypotheses. They remain hypotheses until verified by chained, corroborated evidence. And if this was staged, what are the moral and legal implications? Can someone manufacture the appearance of a murder and present it as real? What laws apply to large-scale audiovisual deception intended to mislead millions? These are real legal and ethical questions for legislators, platforms, and investigators. If the public recorded it, shared it, and believed it, are we complicit in propagating an illusion? If families mourned, if crowds wept, if people shifted opinions because of something later found to have been altered, who bears the burden of that outcome?
Not just a controversy.
What happens to the idea of truth when the evidence itself can be changed? What happens to justice when perception can be programmed and distributed at scale? Because this isn't just about Charlie KRIK. It's about us, our collective hunger for spectacle, our predisposition to trust the moving image, and how quickly a narrative can harden when amplified by social platforms. Media theorists remind us reality in the modern era is often a matter of pixels and persuasion.
Threatening and
Forensic video analysts warn that advanced manipulation can make fiction look indistinguishable from fact without access to original masters.
Death threats.
Psychological experts point out the emotional crime of mass deception. A society conditioned to accept spectacle as reality risks long-term erosion of trust.
Designed to
and maybe that's the most dangerous part.
The threats
not only that someone might fool us once,
days of her public
but that we could be primed to believe the next engineered moment even faster.
With messages so
context and timeline for clarity.
Prompted concern from
the event took place on September 10th, 2025, at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, under a large white tent that hosted the event branded as the American Comeback Tour. Charlie KRIK, a widely known political activist, speaker, and media personality, was at the center of that event. Around 3,000 people had gathered. The shot rang. He had been speaking for roughly 20 minutes when the incident occurred. Onto the very chair Charlie KRIK Security at the event was described by some attendees as minimal, mounted behind him. Multiple observers later said they felt uneasy about the lack of visible rooftop sweeps and other protective measures. Law enforcement established multiple crime scenes at the event site and at probable vantage points, roof lines, and nearby wooded areas. Outside the reach of public appeals for footage were issued. Outside the reach of truth. Some open-source analysts say the footage the public has seen so far includes edited or re-encoded versions that show frame jumps and pixel distortions when compared side by side, while official investigators continue to collect and examine raw evidence. We've walked through the official narrative. We've also pointed out the technical and evidentiary cracks that independent analysts and members of the public have flagged. If you're watching now, we ask the question, I need to know, no one wanted to hear aloud. Drop your location in the comments. What if there was no shot captured unambiguously on raw, independent, wide-angle video when evidence vanishes? What if there is no widely published, incontrovertible, raw camera master that clearly shows the sequence from every critical vantage? What if, as some suggest, a sophisticated hologram or compositing workflow was presented to a live audience, an illusion fed to a manipulated public? That's a possibility raised by technical observations. It is not asserted as fact here. The truth may be more complicated, and resolving it depends on transparent evidence sharing and independent forensic review. Don't stay silent. Write in the comments below. Do you believe the shooting footage is straightforward, or do you think elements were engineered? Share timestamps, point to original downloads if you have them, and describe what you see. If you have original files, preserve them and consider submitting them to official investigators. Do not spread copies without provenance. If you've rewatched the circulated videos and you shared clips unthinkingly, now is the moment to reconsider. Check sources, preserve original files, and label what you share, verified, unverified. Share this video with someone who still believes the publicly available footage is complete and unedited, and ask them to look at source files and official statements. Subscribe if you want more methodical, evidence-first deep dives. We don't just scratch the surface. We examine sources, test claims, and follow chain of custody. Together, we seek accountability, not just for Charlie KRIK, but for a media ecosystem that must be able to prove truth. I'm Captain Joachim, reminding you, skepticism is not cynicism. It's how we protect public discourse from manipulation. We don't just watch stories, we investigate them. See you in the next case. Stay vigilant.